Hi, welcome back everybody. Today I want to do a little video and I want to talk about a subject that has come up quite often. One of the things that you run into when you're in business is you have occasionally you'll get irate or unreasonable customers. So what triggered this is I had an experience recently with a customer, and yeah, it was really interesting. So what happened was this. I had an engine that a customer brought me, I don't know, like a year and a half earlier, and it was one of those things where he brought me the block, and then a month later he brought me the rods, and then he just kind of pieced this thing together, and he's like, oh, you know, I'm trying to do this, and I'm like, that's fine, man, you know, we'll do it. So he didn't have a lot of money, and the block was kind of a budget build. So I went ahead and bored the block, and he was bringing me pieces for the motor one piece at a time, and he brought me the cylinder heads. Well, what I did with the cylinder heads is he said, oh yeah, these heads are rebuilt. Another somewhere else had rebuilt them, and he said, I had these rebuilt, you know, I've had them set aside. They were a little bit dirty, you know, but I just gave him a quick once over and leak tested the valves, and everything seemed to be pretty good on them. So I was like, okay. So, but what I did is I went ahead and put those on the motor, which I broke one of my biggest rules, because I many years ago I just decided I'm not doing that no more. But you know, the guy was on a budget, and he was like, man, I really need you to help me out. And basically I was doing the motor for almost nothing. So I was like, you know what, I'll put these on and you can take the motor, and you know, just give me a few $100 or whatever. So it was a really budget type engine, but you know, it was, you know, it was everything was put together correctly, and it was you know, pretty solid lower end on it. So what happened is he waited another month, and he came back and he said, oh man, I can't pay you for the motor, you know, just go ahead and keep it, I'm getting a divorce. And it was just a big long story. So I ended up with that engine in the shop, and I had it for probably a year and a half. And finally one day I said, you know what, I'm going to sell this thing. I know it's not a quality build, it's just a cheap get you by motor. So I decided I'm going to sell this thing. So I advertised it cheap. I said, I'm just going to unload this thing cheap. I put it on there for like $800, right? And it was you know, normally in that engine, if we did a top-notch job on it, it would be 3 or 4 times that much. So I wanted to sell it cheap, and because it was, you know, just a low-budget rebuild. So I sold the engine to somebody out of state, and I shipped the engine to him. He paid for the engine, plus he paid for the shipping. Well, the engine gets to the customer, and he calls me up, and he's not happy with this engine at all. And you know, to be honest with you, I had what happened is the cylinder heads that guy brought me, they really did turn out to be, one of them had some damage on it that I didn't catch, because you know, they weren't my heads. I didn't really look over them. I broke my rule, which my bad, right? I did something that I shouldn't have done. And so I was like, okay, fine. You know what? I'm just going to send you all your money back. He's like, I want a refund. I said, no problem. And not only that, I said, you know what? Just go ahead and keep the engine. I don't want to pay to ship it back. Just, there's new pistons in there. There's a new cam and lifters in there. There's a freshly cut crank in there. You know, there's a new timing chain and gear set. You know, you could probably, you know, sell that block as well. The heads, just toss them or whatever, because it just turned out, you know, I feel kind of bad about that part of it, because it just turned out to be just a real bad motor. And so, you know, but all I can do at that point is you know, slap myself on the wrist and say, why did you do that? Because you know better, right? You broke your own rule, and you basically, you know, lost your butt on this deal, because you basically had to give the thing away and refund the money, and you spent money on a shipping crate and everything, and you had to give it was just a total wash. But see, here's the thing, when stuff like that happens, guys, my advice to you if something happens and you're dealing with a customer, especially in this business, and it's your fault, do yourself a favor and just make it right. Give them all their money back, whatever they want, make it right. And even at that, sometimes, so what happened with this is the customer, it was a PayPal transaction, so I refunded the PayPal transaction. Well, for some reason, PayPal put like a 3-day hold on the refund. Well, this guy went ballistic, and he's, saying, I can't believe that you're master certified, and I can't believe you don't have any integrity, and he's just basically being attacking me and being completely unreasonable, when all I did was get on there and click refund. I had no idea PayPal was going to put a hold on that. I have no clue. I still don't know why they did that, right? But I tried to explain everything the best I could, and he said, well, I'm flying out there, and you better have my money ready when I get there. He's basically kind of threatening me, or he's saying things that are of a threatening nature, and I kept trying to be diplomatic. So finally, after he's texting me just nonstop for like a day and a half, and he's bringing up all kinds of stuff like, well, now I have to pay taxes on this transaction, which is totally nonsense because you don't pay taxes on a refund. But it was just all of this stuff. And then he brought his wife into, well, my wife's mad, and my wife says that you need to do this. And like, hey man, I didn't make a deal with your wife, right? The motor turned out to be a lemon. My bad. I refunded all your money, plus I told you to keep the new parts for your trouble. But you're coming back at me, and this is what customers do. They'll just keep on and on and on. I don't know what he wanted. So he was upset that he had to wait 2 or 3 days for his money from PayPal. And I finally told him, I said, look, I've already given you a refund. They took the money out of my account. I don't have the money. It's gone. It's in cyberspace somewhere. PayPal has it. And but even after all of that, I did everything I could to make this right. For his trouble, I gave him a bunch of new parts. I sometimes you bend over backwards, and it doesn't matter. I finally got to the point with this guy where I just told him, you know what? You got your refund. Stop texting me. Stop. Don't contact me anymore. I'm done with you. And I literally found his number in my iPhone, and I blocked him. That's all you can do. But the thing is, you have to try to be diplomatic, and I was very diplomatic, as much as I could be. I lost my temper a little bit a couple of times. In fact, the last text I sent to him, he was complaining about PayPal charging him 48 cents. And he made a big deal about that. And at that point, I just texted him back and I said, now you're starting to piss me off. Okay, you try to be patient, but you can only take so much. I gave you a whole motor with $300 worth of new parts, and you're complaining about 48 cents after I gave you all your money back. And technically I could have said, you know what, if you really want me to, I will send you 48 cents. If it really is that big of a deal. But he was just looking for something to complain about. And so sometimes, you guys, you will get customers that no matter what you do, they are completely unreasonable. Another situation I remember way back when I worked for Napa, we had that's my neighbor's dog, by the way, so yeah. I had another video where that stupid dog was barking the whole time and everybody complained. So, not my dog. So I was working on a cylinder head. It was a 6-cylinder inline Ford, and it had a threaded hole that was just completely wallered out. The customer or somebody had tried to drill it, and they drilled it sideways. So I was putting an insert. We have these thick hardened inserts called Easy Locks, and they take a pretty big diameter hole. So I was drilling out. I had the right size drill bit and everything, and I had the kit there. and I was drilling out that hole, and it was a very large hole. It's like a 1/2-inch hole, and it was only a 3/8 bolt on the side of the head. So, but you have to drill a 1/2-inch hole, tap it, and put this big steel insert in. They work really well. The customer came in at that moment, and he was with the boss of the shop, and he walked over and he saw me drilling that 1/2-inch hole through the intake side of the head, which is perfectly fine, and we've repaired a lot of them that way. And this guy flipped out. And I mean, he was like, "Oh, you put a hole in my head," and he's cussing and screaming. And that was when I worked for the company I work for. Their initials are Napa Auto Parts. So he's just having a fit. And we're trying to tell him, my boss is trying to talk to him, tell him this is a repair we do all the time. It's set up on the machine, it's leveled, we know what we're doing. And he walked out of the shop, boom, slammed the door, and he went right up to the front, to the management office. And he's up there screaming and yelling and cussing, saying we ruined his head, and the reality is we were just repairing the head. There's absolutely nothing wrong with what we did. But there was no reasoning with the guy. The guy was so unreasonable. He was so unreasonable and so loud and belligerent that finally the local division manager, who was actually in our building there, he just said, "You know what? I'll buy you a new head. I'll buy you a new head." And he literally went out and bought this guy a completely rebuilt head. And all we had with his head was just an old, nasty, worn out head that we were just replacing some broken studs in. So, and the reason that he did that is because this guy is having a fit in front of a bunch of customers, and at that time that company was big and corporate, and so they had a policy, just make the customer happy no matter what. Well, when you have your own shop, yeah, you need to stand behind your work. I mean, if you get, everybody makes mistakes. I admit I made a mistake with that Ford engine, right? That I put the heads on it, that I didn't check them good enough. My bad, right? But if you make a mistake and you refund all the customer's money and then give them a little extra, even like I did, to try to make it right, instead of asking for all those parts back, I said, you know what, keep them, sell them, do whatever you want with it. They're worth several $100s. And they still are unreasonable. You got to cut that relationship off. I mean, they have no legal standing to do anything at that point if you've refunded all their money, because literally the transaction is void. So I just want to let you guys know, you might run into that. And years ago, back when I knew everything, I had a situation like this, and this doesn't happen very often. I've only had, in the last, I've been pretty fortunate, because in the last, I don't know, 25 years or so that I've been doing this, probably closer to 30 now, I've only had a handful of situations where that's actually happened, where something's gone bad and I've had to refund the money. The vast majority of the stuff it works well because I try to be conscientious, I try to take my time, I try to make sure I do everything right. But the fact of the matter is, guys, if you're going to be in the automotive industry, there's going to be a percentage of failure to everything you do. You are going to have comebacks. You are going to have things that, okay, I had an engine a couple years ago where the connecting rod just snapped in half. No explanation. The rod had an internal flaw, and it snapped in half, and that was a brand new set of rods, right? I tried to get a warranty from the company I bought the rods from, and they're like, no, it just turned into be a big hassle, so I just ate it, right? Those kind of things happen, and when that happens, my advice to you is to stand behind it and just make them happy. Because the one time years ago that I didn't do that, boy, let me tell you what, it ended up being very disastrous. I mean, what happens a lot of times is, with the social media that we have, actually in the last 10, 15 years, we've had the internet, we've had social media. Social media today is, they can get online and they can really hurt your reputation, especially if you have a shop or a company. So yeah, I mean, you want to try to avoid that. Sometimes it's better to just cut your losses and say, you know what, this one's a wash, I'll make it up on the next one. What you don't want to do is you don't want to get into a big confrontation with a customer that has a problem. Even if you're right, and you know, there's limits to that. But if a customer has a problem with an engine and, you know, they're upset and irate, honestly, it's better just to give them their money back, refund them, make them happy, make it right, give them whatever they want, and make them go away. Because the damage that they can do to you with social media and with, you know, lawsuits and everything else. And I mean, if they bring a lawsuit against you, even if you win, you really don't win, because you waste all kinds of time. You have to pay money to defend yourself. It's just not worth it. It really isn't. There's been you know, I haven't had a lot of this happen, because after that one experience I had years ago where I tried to fight the guy, and he went to social media and he made me look bad. Most of what he said was lies, right? It wasn't true. But that doesn't matter, because I had an experience years ago, and this was just something I saw. I was driving down, there's a major street here in Phoenix called Bell Road. I was driving down Bell Road, and I saw a Ford Aerostar van. Now, you guys know what an Aerostar van is. That's how long ago this was. And it was so long ago that the Aerostar van was new. It looked like it was brand new, a year old maybe. It had this big sign in the back window, and it looked like the guy had, you know, got his kids involved in this, and it was a big poster board, and it had lemons drawn on it, and it had a big, giant black wording, and it said, "I bought this lemon at Mel Clayton Ford." Now, Mel Clayton Ford has long since gone out of business. They no longer exist. They've been gone for years. I'm going to say that was at least 24, 25 years ago. And I'm going to tell you something, guys. I remember that van, and I remember that sign like that happened yesterday. And you know what else? After I saw that sign, I never went to Mel Clayton Ford for anything. So, you know, if you screw somebody over, or even if you're not screwing them over, let's say something goes south and you say, "No, I'm not giving you your money back, it's all your fault." And I understand there's times where the customer blows a motor, right? And it is their fault. You know, if it's obviously their fault. You know, they burn the thing to the ground and overheat it, or go lean and detonate the crap out of it. I mean, I've had that happen lots of times. So, but the point is, my advice to you is that a lot of times it's better just to make it right. And hopefully I'm getting that point across. It's better just to cut your losses, make them happy, you know, down the road. And they may say, you know, because then what happens is, well, you know, they really sold me a bad deal, or they really did a bad job on my car. But one thing I got to say about them, they made it right. They took care of the problem. They made it right. People are human. It happens. If people are satisfied with your work, or they're satisfied with how you stand behind your work, they're going to tell one or two people. If they're unsatisfied with your work, it's just going to be like Mel Clayton Ford. 25 years, and I still remember that sign like it was yesterday. They're going to tell everybody they know to stand clear of you if they get a raw deal. So, you know, you really have to think about that kind of stuff in business. You really have to think about that, because your reputation, if you lose your reputation, and I've had customers, you know, just flat out cuss me out and walk out of the shop, even after I offered to do, you know, whatever they wanted. Some people are just going to be negative and complaining, unhappy, no matter what you do. That's a small majority. Most people, most customers out there, if you make it right and you make an effort to, you know, right your wrongs, fix your mistakes and you're legitimate and you make them, you know, a lot of times you just say, you know, what do you want? What do you want me to do? You know, and offer them something extra. You know, say, you know what, I'm going to pay for your next oil change or whatever. Usually, the vast majority of people will be happy with that. So that's my take on it. I just thought I'd throw that out there because this experience with this motor is fresh in my mind, and you know, I wanted to put that out there. Some of you guys that are new in the business and you're younger, you know, you need to really take this to heart. It is better, very often, more often than not, it is better to just take a loss and make the customer happy. That's my advice to you. So hopefully this makes sense to you. Hopefully this is some good wisdom, right? This comes from 25, 30 years of experience and learning things the hard way. So learn from my mistakes, not your own, and just take care of those customers. I appreciate you watching, and I will talk to you very soon, I promise.